Skilla, and this is Nerd Stuff with Skilla, and today I'm going to talk about Season 8, Episode 4 of AMC's The Walking Dead, called Some Guy. If you have not gotten caught up on The Walking Dead, go do that and then come back and watch this video because I'm going to spoil some stuff. So now that the spoiler warning is out of the way, this whole episode has to do with Ezekiel and Carol. It picks up pretty much immediately at the end of the previous episode, where they came upon a savior's base. Carol goes in to inspect it, and then Ezekiel and crew get gunned down. Now Ezekiel had a giant dog pile plop on top of him so that he didn't get hurt. He makes it out alive, and the first scene of this episode is him kind of getting into garb and getting into character and becoming the king rather than being himself the zookeeper fellow, just some guy, right? And he gives this big heartwarming speech to all these people who are about to go out with them and die. All of their family is just hugging them goodbye, and clearly everybody's a little bit worried. We see Ezekiel climb out from underneath the pile of bodies and start trying to escape, but the people who were just fighting with him are turning, and so they are all beginning to attack him, and he seems like he's kind of losing his drive to fight back. Meanwhile, Carol is inside this compound, and she's being her stealthy little tricky self and figuring out ways around their defenses. So one of the coolest things she does in this episode is she hears a group of dudes underneath the floor that she's on, and she just mows them all down. I really like this episode overall, but my main concern is that all of the characters in this episode, with the exception of the one that we lost, just seem to be completely invincible, and I think that sometimes that takes a little bit of the tension away and makes it less suspenseful to watch. That is true for Carol going through and killing guys throughout the compound. Like, those two jokers outside when she's hiding in the car, behind the cars. There's no way those guys are going to kill her. Jerry actually gets to show out a little bit in this episode, which I love because I love Jerry. He's so likable and so fun and such a great addition to the cast. So how can you not like Jerry? Jerry actually gets to use that battle axe he's been brandishing forever, and he slices this dude straight in half. He's cutting this Jeffrey Dahmer looking dude. This guy is a low-level savior who's trying to take Ezekiel in so that he can gain, climb that next rung in the ladder, right? And then Ezekiel and Gary and Carol all meet up, and they're traveling through the woods. Eventually Carol escapes the guys. She tries to tell them that they're not going to get out of there with the weapons, and they're like, nah, lady, we're gonna go. She meets back up with Ezekiel and Gary, and her and Ezekiel kind of have a discussion while they're walking around about how he became the hero on purpose. He didn't just fall into being the hero, he had to make that choice. And as longtime watchers of the show know, Carol made that choice as well, multiple times. She's went from being this abused woman to being crazy and just an unstoppable killing machine to, the whole making cookies Carol, and then back to killing machine Carol. Ezekiel asks her, did you make the choice to be who you are? And she's like, yeah, I did. Definitely chose that. But the guys are escaping, and Gary and Ezekiel are like, oh no, what are we gonna do? They got the guns and they're leaving. And then Carol hears a motorcycle and she goes, they're not getting away. You're like, She heard that motorcycle, and you could just see all the butterflies burst out of her chest and happiness that freaking Daryl's around the corner. Speaking of which, we have one of the most ridiculous car chase scenes ever in this episode. I loved it. I loved watching it. It was fun to watch, but again, we're getting back to where the stakes and the tension are lower because we're chasing after these guys because they have these high-powered weapons that they're using against us, but even though they shoot a hole into the motor of the Jeep that Rick is driving, he just kind of swerves out of the way, and there's Daryl behind him. And I really didn't like that in the trailer for this episode showed that maneuver happening. I don't know if everybody remembers that, but I remember seeing that, and that it didn't happen earlier in this chase scene. I'm like, well, that just completely ruins any thought that I might have had that Daryl could possibly get injured during this. They run down these dudes and they run them off the road, and there's a cute little scene between Daryl and Rick when Rick crawls from the wreckage. He's like, you look like shit, man. It was really fun. It was a fun scene, but I wish that maybe it's just because we haven't had a major character death in a while, and not that I want that to happen, but if that's the only stakes you have to raise, then I guess you should raise them. Because even though this episode was really entertaining, and the actors who play Ezekiel and Carol both gave fantastic performances, I thought, sometimes the stakes just need to be higher. Sometimes we need to actually be afraid of things. What I want to know is what happened with Gary when everybody else was getting mowed down, because he seems like the first guy who would jump on top of Ezekiel to save him. But he didn't. He had to have run to the woods and survived. Unless maybe I missed something where he was already separated from the group for a minute. But I don't think that's the case. I just wonder about that, and if it'll be explored within this season, how Gary might feel some guilt over that, how he didn't sacrifice himself to save Ezekiel. I think that is a possibility. At least a one-off conversation that they have, like maybe Gary feels indebted to Ezekiel because he didn't save his life. They're being chased by all the walkers, and Ezekiel's badly damaged. The Jeffrey Dahmer guy stepped on his leg and stuff where he'd already been hurt, and he's just hobbling everywhere, and it's really kind of sad to watch him so downtrodden. They have to walk through this toxic waste that has turned a bunch of walkers into just kind of weird, gross, pale, droopy, weird, morphed walkers. And I think that might be the explanation for the droopy, weird, green brain dude we saw earlier in the season. Our cast just walked through this waste, so are they going to be affected by it? Are they going to start getting sick? I hope not. And then Shiva jumps in and saves the day. They're trying to pull Ezekiel out of this nasty biohazardous walker pit, and he's like, no, you gotta leave me here. It's kind of like he's got to go down with the ship, and he gets pulled out, and Shiva starts taking down walkers, but then the walkers overtake Shiva, and then she dies, and it's super sad, and I hate that it happened so quickly. It's good that she went out saving Ezekiel, and I know that hurt him badly. The fact that Gary and Carol were both we need you to be the king, and he's just no, just let me go. You have to be the king. You are the leader, and if you just abandon us at this point, what happens next? And I think that really struck a chord with Ezekiel. He might spend a couple of episodes down in the dumps possibly, but I think that it's going to make him stronger in the long run, having lost so many people who he knew. I think that that's going to be a really big, important turning point for him. Overall, this episode was really good, I thought, but I do wish that the stakes were higher. That's my only complaint. I love this show, and I know that sometimes it falls into the same quagmire that it has through different seasons, but I think that this season is going to be really fantastic, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Give me a big thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to my channel if you want to hear about more nerdy things from me. Drop a comment down below with who you think the next big character death is going to be. If you know something from the comics, please try not to be too spoilery. And as always, thank you so much for watching.